Hey everybody, my name is Trevor Sumner. Happy to be your host in this session. We'll be talking about activating the physical store and some of the opportunities around IoT and how people are thinking about retail tech budgets and the like. Before we jump in, some just quick housekeeping. We're going to be talking about activating store IoT, some of the technologies, retail budgets, how they're shifting, and what we've learned at Perch from our customers about how people are reacting to the COVID pandemic and what that means for the in-store experience and the store activation overall. We'll be sharing a bunch of slides and some videos. We'll be engaging in Q&A. You can add to the chat. But I do want to manage some expectations about our session on the Hopin platform. I heard there were some technology issues earlier, but hopefully they've been worked out. If there are any issues, we'll be proactive in communication. At the right-hand side of your window, you'll see your chat window. This is where you can interact with us. Make sure you're toggled to the session, not the event. Otherwise, you're going to be messaging the whole event and we won't see your chat. There is an option to be invited on stage and make a comment. I'm a little wary of that. We might try it out if somebody's brave enough to come on stage with me. And what you can do is basically click share audio and video on the top of your video window, and you'll get invited into my moderation queue, and I can invite you up, and then you can ask a question and be in front of people, and et cetera. And it's a cool feature, and I want to try out and see how it goes. If we get sidetracked a little too much, and I think it's getting away from where we're trying to go, then I may decide, like, let's just do it via chat. So that's it for housekeeping. Thank everybody for joining us. What I'm going to do is kind of start sharing my screen, let's jump right in, right? Okay, great. So there I go. All right, sharing my screen. Hopefully you all can see that. And Brian, if you can confirm on Slack that everything looks good, that would be appreciative, because in full screen mode, it's hard to see the chat. And great, awesome. So everything looks good. We're going to jump right in, and we're going to talk about activating the physical store and the role of digital and creating omnichannel profitability. So my name is Trevor Sumner. I'm the CEO of Perch. We are the leader in product engagement, marketing, and retail displays that detect what products customers touch at the shelf. So it's kind of like Minority Report. The moment you touch a product on the shelf, it wakes up and starts telling you about the product. And we're going to talk a little bit about kind of why technologies such as sensors, IoT, 5G are creating kind of a profound sea change in the way we collect data, the way we respond to data. We rather kind of transform the in-store experience. I've been about a 20-year veteran in technology, despite my baby face. I've been an investor, an entrepreneur, an advisor, an operator, and I was born in Greenwich Village. Amateur chef. Last night I cooked a Momofuku style brisket, which was amazing. I'm a scuba diver, and even have scuba dived in every continent, including Antarctica. I'm also an avid fisherman. And that's just a little bit about me. And I say that because I'm a retail technologist and adventurer, because when I shifted my career towards retail tech, a lot of my technology friends were like, whoa, like retail industry? Are you sure? Like, it's an interesting industry in terms of retail technology adoption on the in-store side. And what we've seen is certainly been a little bit more of a bumpy road with COVID going on. So it has been a greater adventure than I initially anticipated. But I think what you're seeing is a tremendous adoption of technology and an acceleration that's really interesting. But it's interesting to see how the year started up about some of this notion of the in-store experience. This is an article from Glossy. Is experiential retail another COVID-19 casualty? That was something that I read. Ricardo Belmar actually pointed me to it. And the conclusion is no. Experiential retail is not a casualty. But there's a lot of people asking questions about what is the role of in-store. Gwen Morrison, who was at WPP's The Store, wrote a post about his experience worth investing in. And again, really thinking through, like, what is the role of the store experience in this world? And, rather than saying that experiential is a casualty of the COVID environment, instead, I would say that we are seeing a democratization of experiential retail, so that it's no longer the purview of the luxury providers or the stories of this world. In fact, we're starting to see this in key trip driver categories. So one of our most popular posts on our Perch blog last year was the winners and losers of the Target and Ulta partnership, which really made waves because you think of Ulta as kind of more of a masstige or prestige beauty offering, and it's at a Target. Or Sephora, quickly moved to add 850 Sephora's stores at Kohl's, right? And these are all big bets on beauty, but it's not just the masstige and prestige beauty lines that are looking to get mass market acceptance. Even grocery stores, I saw a mock of a major grocery store, whom you'd know if I said, and they're redoing the beauty environments, and it looks like a Mac. I mean, the lighting, the colors, the digital, everything. And so what we're seeing is really upping the game in experience now that a lot of the mass market providers have nailed, discount, loyalty, convenience, et cetera. And so I think experiential retail is actually, William Gibson said, the future is here, it's just not evenly distributed. The future of experiential, which had been the purview of luxury, is now being more evenly distributed in mass. And in fact, Steve Lamar, who's the president of the AAFA, the Footwear Association, said we've seen 10 years of innovation in the last 10 months. And if you think about it, like all the technologies that became real in 2020 were pretty impressive, right? Buy online, pick up in store, local delivery, Instacart shipped, local fulfillment networks, e-commerce returns, contactless payments, cashierless checkout, as I have in parentheses, because I don't think it really got to scale this year, but I think we'll get there in the next year or two. New loyalty rewards, CRM, personalization. Everybody relaunched their mobile apps, Walmart Plus, Target, Red Card, Walgreens, CVS, CarePass, all that stuff. Mobile apps, dynamic store navigation, wayfinding, augmented reality tools, inventory management, shelf sensors, robots, computer vision. All that became real in 2020. And that's an impressive amount of in-store technology being deployed. Now, that said, there's been a shift on the experience side, as opposed to logistics, fulfillment, transactions, CRM data, a shift generally to e-commerce because so much of the market has shifted to e-commerce. Now, mind you, all the graphs that kind of stop in May that show like this 20% gain in April or May, if you follow that line, overall, instead of capturing an additional 1 to 1.5% of brick and mortar retail overall market share, it'll probably do 3% last year, right? So it's basically a 2-year acceleration instead of a 1-year acceleration. So let's not get kind of overly excited here, but that's a significant amount of dollars, right? And so we talk to a lot of retailers, and what they tell us is that from their timing, like the mass and CPG players, they've been investing in in-store experience now, right? And this makes sense, right? Because they've been essential, they've been open, wildly profitable, hitting record numbers, whether you're on the brand, P&G, Johnson & Johnson, obviously, all hitting record numbers, but also on the retailer, the Targets, the Walmarts, they've far outperformed the S&P 500. They've captured e-commerce share from Amazon. They're posting record profits. But what's interesting is for them, they're considering like, how do we focus on omni-channel conversion? How do we think about sales associate augmentation? Because in COVID times, you want less sales associates, and they're taking this as an opportunity to update their stores to rely less on sales associates. And how do they build in loyalty to drive people in? Because ultimately, that's one of their key points of their differentiation, which is why you see so many loyalty stores kind of being, loyalty programs being updated. In the mid-market, it's completely different. If you look at the kind of like the Macys and the department stores and the mid-market retailers, and of course, this is dependent on category. Apparel, for example, is a particularly hard category with different dynamics than, let's say, home goods, which has actually accelerated during COVID. But what we're hearing is the budgets will shift kind of Q3, Q4. So there's actually a quote at the bottom from a chief digital officer at a department store, who I'm not going to name, but he basically said that we were spending about 70% of the digital budget on e-commerce versus in store. So we're doing 30% in store. We shifted that completely 100% online, and we'll shift it back for Q3 when we expect shoppers to return en masse, post-vaccinations, et cetera. And for them in the mid-market segments, we're looking at the in-store experience really kind of being a part of the differentiation, thinking about sales associates being empowered, personalization and CRM being a big piece, looking at shopping histories and kind of being able to make better recommendations, but also personalization of products. And in the luxury segment, we're hearing it a little bit earlier. And this is part of that kind of K-shaped recovery that we're hearing, where the reality is Americans actually have $1.3 trillion more in savings than they did before the pandemic. So we have more money. It's just not evenly distributed. It's people with stock market accounts at record levels. So the luxury market, and you can see this in areas like China, really, is coming back strong. And they expect Q2 to Q3 to be kind of investing in that in-store experience. And it's really focused on in-store experience, client data capture, and personalization. So those are some of the things that we're seeing in terms of investment shifting. And there's a poll to see, love to get your feedback as to when you think about, reallocating that budget back to in-store. But the question is like, why do it in store at all, right? What is the future of brick and mortar retail, and what are the things that actually drive it? So I would argue that the purpose of the store, the role of the store, is fivefold. First, profits, and just kind of economics. 2, the brand experience itself. 3, product discovery, because it's much better in store. Loyalty and omni-channel conversion, and this is kind of a little bit more new in 2020, especially for places like grocery, where e-commerce share hadn't been, was at 3.2% and now has doubled, right? And again, it'll come back down, but it's a pretty sizable shift. And then the last is data collection, which is a little bit of a new one. And certainly there's overlap, right? Loyalty and omni-channel conversion is a lot about data collection, but there's more here that we'll talk about. So let me just jump in, because I think there's some really interesting data here about, why the store is important. And the reality is stores drive profitability, full stop. There are very few pure plays that are actually profitable because it's hard. And you got to pick categories where the cost of shipping and logistics and shipping these one-off products doesn't outweigh your margin. And this is most demonstrable in grocery, where you've got a thin margin type business. So if you look at the left over here, there are only 2 channels that are profitable in grocery: in-store, which is at the top over here, and micro fulfillment center automation, right here. Now, if you add $7 delivery or $4 click and collect fee, you can start making certain of these almost profitable. Almost none of the home delivery are, except micro fulfillment center automated. Adding that fee gets you over here, right? But even click and collect, like grocer picks from the store, grocer picks from a dark store, like you can get it over the line, but it's not much of a margin, and not as much margin as in store. But basically, it's not a very profitable business, right? And again, $7 delivery fee is a lot of money if you're talking, $50, $70 in groceries at a time. That's like 10 to 15%. So why do stores drive profitability? Shoppers who also spend in store are 7 times more valuable in terms of purchasing total sales. The cost of store acquisition is much lower at scale. Store fulfillment is less expensive for most categories. Return rates for in-store are 3 times less, and brand loyalty is 27% higher. So stores are critical here. And what's really interesting is this is some new data from Global Data and Neil Saunders, who you should absolutely follow if you don't, is that actually brick and mortar stores have taken share from e-commerce because of these very dynamics of the importance of local fulfillment. So for the first time, where it was around 35% of online sales supported by physical stores, it's now cracked above 42%. And that's, I'm expecting an update to this. It's actually gone higher. So that's actually really interesting. If you look at it also, the stores like Walmart, Best Buy, those with local brick and mortar presences have actually captured e-commerce share, not just on the fulfillment side, but in terms of, percentage of e-commerce, they've grown more than Amazon has. And so why are people offering, local fulfillment? If you ask stores, again, pre-pandemic, the number one reason is this purple over here, which was attract shoppers who make additional purchases. It's get them near the store to kind of get them to convert. So this role of store is becoming kind of central. And the question is, how do you activate that, those brand paths, those shopper journeys? And so, we've seen on the right here, Kohl's partnering with Amazon to process returns. That's been wildly debated. Was that a really smart call, a terrible call? There's some mixed debate on it. But what's really interesting is Walmart just recently offered free at-home pickups for online product returns. right? They're thinking about the return process as the overall part of the brand experience, right? And so that is part of activating a store, right? And I talked to again this chief digital officer at a major department store, and they said one thing to really focus is on the return process, how to make that actually really, really great as a way to have that interaction when you go into store to be a good reaction, and then focusing on back at shopping. And this is where I think the physical store really shines, right? Is that shopping is about connecting people and products. And sometimes I think we've lost the plot. Some people are like, oh, we just put the products on the shelf. Well, the reality is Amazon has more shelf space than anybody with 200 million SKUs or whatever it is with the marketplace, some outrageous number. But what we do to connect people in stores is, we create events, we create stores, social media, places to aggregate people. And then connecting about products is about giving them access to things like reviews and the packaging so that they can see and feel it and touch it, pricing, marketing, promotions, branding, all that stuff, and bringing those two together. But when we think about the store in its current form, it's really actually not that great at providing all that kind of product level connection. What it is, being able to see the products and very quickly kind of search through them all. And that discovery is a critical piece of the shopper journey. And right now, 87% of shoppers begin their product journey online because that's where the product content lives. That's where the ratings and reviews are. That's where the how-to videos and the products like this. And then you get even 27% of people actually go in store and then end up purchasing online because they need to get that data. And the worst part about it is they may be purchasing that product that you marketed at Kohl's or Macys or even Target, and then deciding to buy it on Amazon, so the retailer loses that sale. So, part of the challenge here is if you look at the traditional store, it's static. It's just, products on shelves. And one of the things we say, do your products know what's going on at the shelf? Or are they marketing themselves in interesting ways, or are they just sitting on a shelf, right? If you think about it right now, as we speak, there are billions of people product connections, impressions where people are looking at a product, seeing a product right now that aren't being measured. Billions of interactions where people touch a product and look at it and consider it, not instrumented. Billions of purchase data, yes, that's instrumented. But there's zero digital media, zero data, zero dynamicism about what works to connect people and products. And so what I'm going to show you a little bit is about, what Perch has learned in terms of how people are changing their approach in activating the store based on COVID. But to do that, I got to give you a little bit about a thesis about who we are. So I know you're not here for the Perch pitch. I'll go over this really quickly because I think what's really interesting is how buyer behaviors have changed around activating the store. For Perch, what we think about is that online you can click on products to get all this type of information. Why can't I click on products in store? And for us, we think about that as the pickup of the product. That's the, hey, I'm clicking on it. I'm telling you I'm interested in your product, right? And that's the permission to allow every product to tell its story, right? And so we got started, on a luxury high end where if you touch a fragrance at Joe Malone, it animates into honeysuckle and lemon, right? Or wildflowers here. We democratized that, at places like Macys, where you could actually take quizzes to find your fragrance scent. You can pick up a fragrance and get brand information and even QR codes and, behind the fragrance and the fragrance notes and, some of the product line information. Still in that kind of mid-market segment, right? At Kate Spade, you pick up a purse and, it configures your purse. So you can personalize it with polka dots or stripes. You can even email it to yourself so that you can do endless aisle ordering, etc. But this has really been democratized. Now you can find it at, a local ShopRite where you pick up a Band-Aid, we'll sell you Neosporin. You pick up a Neutrogena product on a Loge end cap, right? And it sells you the different products in that regimen, right? So anything where like a product needs education, whether it's CBD or health aids or, whether you're trying to build the brand and, style the look like a shoe. We even do like interactive display cases and other things. And that's as far as I'm going to go with the pitch and cut that off right there, right? Because again, you're here for other things, right? Like, so here's some of the interesting things about what we're seeing as trends as people look at those in-store digital touch points. This example of CoverGirl's Magic Mirror. And what's fascinating about it is about 25% of shoppers who come in store engage with this, right? And 20% of those, we get their email or mobile number. Now imagine that every time somebody walks in, 5% of the time, you can get their email or mobile number. Think about how that enables, you to continue that journey from in-store to omni-channel. Now, that's one of the big benefits. And we're seeing a lot of this around data capture, loyalty conversion, et cetera. That's one piece of it. But what's also interesting is it actually provides a 40% sales lift across all SKUs. And the SKUs here, none of them are in the top 15 at other stores, at not Perch enabled stores, but they're all pushed into the top 15 here. So for brands, it's a real opportunity to connect in new and interesting ways. And again, this is CoverGirl, right? Like this is, in that kind of masstige market. So you saw Kate Spade there earlier. This is a big push that we're seeing in terms of how people are thinking about, in-store digital right now, is to augment the sales associates and offer endless aisle, right? So, sales associate interaction is the biggest threat, or sorry, not sales associate interaction, people interaction, right? That's how COVID is spread, right? Through being too close, air particles, and so minimizing person interaction is critical, which is hard in the mid-market segment and luxury segment where sales associates are such a key part of the experience. So how do you put digital tools in the hands of consumers so they can explore on their own? And the reality is what we're seeing is that creates 80 to 180% sales lift in the mid-market and luxury segment for things like accessories, 45% increase in items in basket. So the sales associate, who says, oh, this would go great with that. You can actually do that with digital as long as it's, kind of a luxury experience. And then lastly, because, each of these, purses has an endless number of little accessories and charms and different configurations, literally thousands of different options. We can actually include the stuff that's not in store. So take that product interest and, engage them to look at, the full assortment that you may have online, but not in store. And we're seeing some people actually have special items that you can only buy online to help cut that conversion and registration. So that's some of the things that we're seeing in the sales associate side, but it's not just, at Kate Spade and luxury providers. It's even, again, at the ShopRite, right? Where, it's kind of product education and cross-sell, but eliminates the need to talk to a sales associate, which we all know at a grocery store may or may not be all that helpful. And just the focus on cross-sell is a bigger piece of what we're hearing from clients, because there's a greater level. If you look at the conversion rates of people going in store, it's much higher because they're going in with a purpose, right? And if I'm going in with a purpose of getting a Band-Aid or getting Zyrtec, let's say for allergies, like, great, that's awesome. The moment that you touch the Zyrtec, the opportunity now is like, great, they're going to buy the Zyrtec. What else can you sell them? Well, you sell Benadryl for immediate, you sell Rhinocort for your nose, Visine for your eyes, et cetera. So we're seeing a move towards more cross-sell as part of the experiences that people are looking at digital. And that cross-sell, I think, is underutilized in current retail, right? If you look at some of the vertical integration that's happening where retailers are starting to offer much higher value services to complement their products, you can look at the easiest one is like just look at the healthcare market where Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid are all offering kind of higher end healthcare services or healthcare products and expiration, wellness, et cetera. So examples of how people could use these types of technologies, which I can't confirm who's talking about what, but these are some examples. For example, if you're at CVS and you touch or start exploring allergy or other medicines, like, hey, how about, get on our subscription, save $10 on our generic brands, but also why not schedule an appointment with one of our allergists at a Minute Clinic, right? Now, a doctor's appointment, now you're talking about hundreds of dollars, right? And so that, $10 allergy converts into $100 or more, kind of purchase. That's a big deal. And, it's not just healthcare. For example, at Walmart, they just recently announced that they are looking at selling cable subscriptions along with its, custom white labeled electronics, right? Now, a cable subscription, depending on, which one you get, it could be anywhere from $50 to $100 a month. I mean, that's a $600, $1,200 charge that they can get in on. That's a pretty big deal. They've also gone in the healthcare space with even dentists, right? And so take a look at the dental products, right? Like, huge opportunity there. Best Buy has Geek Squad for home, smart home delivery and install. They're doing health services that they can bundle in with their medical home initiative. And then you've got people like even in the apparel industry who are offering like subscription offerings. So someone like Ann Taylor can convert that one-time trip into a subscription. Bark, for example, has a big launch at Target. If you're buying a Bark product at Target, why not sell subscriptions as well? So these are some of the things that we're doing. I think, we're seeing a lot more in terms of integration into loyalty and mobile and the collection of data. That is probably one of the biggest things that we see. You saw this Macys example earlier in the reel, but what's really interesting here is not just that it drives 50 to 100% sales lift, which the brands have reported. Macys hasn't given us that data, but we've talked to the brands. It's the fact that you can get QR codes to drive to Macys loyalty, and that it basically drives the app downloads at a pretty significant rate, and the click-through rate's high, and you can provide all this information. You can even do cashless checkout, so you can basically check out and pick it up on your way out the store, so you never have to wait in line. So QR codes, we actually, one of our other most popular pieces of content this year has been the post-COVID rise of QR codes. And again, if you go to our site and our blog, it should be one of the featured articles there, but talking about how there has been this explosion in usage of QR codes, because, just yesterday I went to dinner and outside, socially distanced, all that good stuff. But, where's my menu? A QR code. Everybody knows what a QR code is. And, some of these frictions are going away. So you're seeing technology adoption change as part of this, basically out of the mother of necessity. Another example is contactless Apple Pay. Like, there are a lot of people who are like, oh, it's just too much trouble, I'm not going to set it up. And now that they used it, they realize like, oh, this is actually really more convenient. I think the same you're going to see through QR codes. But that mobile data capture is only one piece of it. One of the things that we really think about is leveraging the new treasure trove of customer engagement data in the store. Right now, if you look at data, you've got kind of store traffic solutions, IRI data, maybe you've got retail next cameras in the ceilings, and you've got like, how many people, what times a day. And then you got the sales data right at the end. But like all the shopper journey of, which products did they touch? When did they become aware of them? How did they consider those products? What was the digital engagement with those products? Did they add to the cart? Did they convert? How often when somebody picks up a product, do they convert to sales? How does that differ for every product on the planogram? All of this kind of bottom of the funnel analytics is missing. And if you think about what that's like, if you think about picking up a product as the click online, I mean, it's criminal, right? Like, imagine trying to run an e-commerce company and not knowing the conversion rates of any of your ads, or, how your visitors convert to sales. You just kind of have your like unique users and unique visitors and your sales data, and you try and figure out what happened in between. And you're like, it's a wide open space. That's where we are currently in store. And that's changing. And that's changing this year, right? In terms of mass. And there's some underlying technology enablement that's doing that. Perch is part of it, sensors are part of it, 5G is part of it. We'll talk a little bit about that, but I'll give you an example. So this is one of the Macys units. This is the floral scent family. And you can kind of see these 5 different scents all marketed together. And so I asked people like, okay, if you were a fragrance, which one would you want to be? Which position on the planogram would you want to be? Now, most people say center, about 70%. 20% say far left, 10% far right, 70% say center. Turns out that's the third best choice. The best choice is actually the far left. You see a 12% engagement lift on the far left, a 10% engagement on the far right, 8% in the center, and then you're about down to 10% on these kind of middle guys, right? So it turns out that, the intuitive thing is not the right thing. Now, we could argue why that is. People read left to right. Maybe it'd be different in, Israel or Arab countries or whatever. But here in the US, like, this is a far different answer than you might expect. And you can use this data, for example, to give premium spots to, category captains. You can actually charge more for those spots. You can really do planogram analysis and even do like conversion ratios about like what converts best, and even like, revenue per pickup. I'll give you another example based upon the Macys fragrance bar. So some of the fragrances are really ornate, right? Like, I mean, this Carolina Herrera bottle from Perch, I mean, it's a shoe, it's beautiful. This is like crystal and nice. This is Invictus. I know a lot about, perfumes these days. Now, there are also some simpler ones, simpler packaging that's a little more traditional. So what's the value of the amount of money that the fragrance companies put into the bottling? Don't really know. You can't really know, right? Like, it sold well. Well, did it sell well because the fragrance is great, because the marketing is great, the promotions are great, or the packaging is great? Well, at Perch, we can actually look at all that bottom of the funnel and say the ones with, let's call it ornate designs, saw a 20% increase in pickup to sales conversions from the moment they pick up to actually selling, and a 22% increase from pickup to clicking on the content. So it does actually make a significant difference. And now you can go back and say, okay, what would a 20% sales increase mean to you? And is it worth spending that $5 to $10 in packaging? And that is something that retailers can start providing as a data platform back to the brands. And that, to me, is part about what it means to activate the store of the future, right? Like, one of the things that people don't talk about too much is how brands and trade dollars flow to retailers to help get promotion, to help share data. And this new data sharing, we actually shared a piece of research that when retailers and brands share more sales data and data like this, they typically see 4 to 8% sales lifts. 4 to 8. What would you do right now if I could say, here's a simple way, just by opening a communication with your retailer and brand partners, that you can increase sales 4 to 8% tomorrow? That's a big, big deal, right? I'll give you another example. You saw this. This is the kind of ShopRite Johnson & Johnson over the counter where you pick up a Band-Aid, it tells you Neosporin, right? So you can see the number of interactions on the shelf, and you could say, hey, wait a second, there are 38% more interactions on the right side. Are we auditing, or are we looking at this planogram the right way? Are the key products we want on the right areas of the planogram? Another example is like looking at the sales numbers, and we can kind of look at it like this on the planogram, and we can compare it with the engagement numbers and start seeing some interesting trends, right? Like the digital that we provide in the center of the shelf, basically got people to stop buying the 30 count Zyrtec and start buying the 70 count Zyrtec because they were more confident in the product set. And so digital could be a good way to start bumping up people into higher value tiers or higher, kind of value items, right? Another example is like if we can look at the product to sales conversion ratio for any product on the shelf. So let's say a product converts at 20% from when somebody picks it up to when they buy it, right? And let's say it's a $10 item, right? 20% of $10 is $2. So every time somebody picks up or touches that item, it's worth $2 to you. Okay, great. Let's map that across the entire planogram and say, are the most engaging products, the most engaging areas of the planogram where we're putting our best performing products on engagement, conversion to sales, and dollars? And the answer in this case was no. In fact, the most profitable from conversion to sales on a dollar per touch perspective were these Neutrogena towelettes, which were on the bottom shelf. And that's why we saw a 17% decrease compared to non-Perch stores. Let's get that up. And when we got that up, this is kind of how we start getting to, like this one shows a 62% sales lift. 62. It's a big, big number. This is how data can power brands to make better decisions, how data can be used to collaborate between retailers and brands. I'll give you one last example around content. Again, this is Johnson & Johnson, because part of my theme is like, this is not specialized technology anymore. This is happening at grocery, at big box, at mass, right? Here, when you pick up a beauty product, it recommends a regimen and all this other stuff. And what's really interesting is, they basically have Neutrogena, and everybody's heard of Neutrogena, and then Aveeno, which is a pretty popular brand. And then Clean & Clear was a new product launch. And so they got Kerry Washington for Neutrogena and Jennifer Aniston for Aveeno, and they didn't have a spokesperson for Clean & Clear. How big a deal is that? We asked them. They said, we don't know. But let's launch with Instagram influencers. We will, quote unquote, settle for Instagram influencers in the videos of these products. What happened? Now, Jennifer Aniston has 35 million Instagram followers. Kerry Washington has 6 million Instagram followers. The Instagram influencers we had 81,000 or just 5,000. My wife has more Instagram followers than Megan Caroline. Megan Caroline's lovely though. I'm not dissing her. But you're talking about 1,000x difference in follower accounts, right? So the spokesperson's got to win, right? Well, what they saw was the Clean & Clear actually had a 20% increase in on-screen content engagement from pickup of the product to the content. And they said, well, let's relaunch the other Neutrogena and Aveeno with influencers to see what happened. They drove an additional 10% sales lift. Now, this is what it means to have data insights, right? And I don't care if it's Perch or anything else. You could put sensors on the shelf. You can use standard cognition to look at like touch data. You can use Retail Next. They're kind of evaluating to try and get towards that where they can get product level interaction data. But the bottom line is this data is fundamentally changing the way we think about activating in store. It is a fundamental role. And one of the big things underlying the change that's happening is that 2021 will be the year that 5G goes from trial to scale. Walgreens has announced that they are going to light up 9,000 of their stores with 5G, specifically for robots, interactive displays, mobile apps, etc. So this stuff is all becoming real in 2021. And if you don't have a data strategy and how you're going to leverage that data, how you might sell that data to brands. Like one of the things that Macys, I forgot to mention, was, Macys is, on those interactive screens, when somebody smells a fragrance, has a thumbs up, thumbs down. All of a sudden, they've got proprietary data to sell back to the fragrance brands about whether people like the fragrance or not. So they can separate what's the value of your content, what's the value of your fragrance, and what's the feedback there, what's the value of your planogram and your packaging, and all these things. And can say, here are all the individual things that go to marketing and merchandising your products and connecting those people and products in store. Here's what's effective, here's what's not effective. And I think there's a future where this data is monetized, right? Like if you think about being a brand and deciding which retailers you're going to work with, it's the ones that provide the highest value services and the margin and sales lifts, right? So, this is why we're seeing with 5G, the ability to kind of connect all these sensors in ways that store Wi-Fi is just too much of a mess. Perch ships with its own 4G hotspot and soon 5G hotspot. And you're seeing, one of the things about 5G, people talk about the speed, but the real innovation is not the speed or the latency, both very impressive improvements, but it's the fact that you can have so much device density, like 1,000x the device density of traditional 4G networks. And so what we're seeing is an explosion of various different types of sensors: computer vision, infrared, RFID, weight sensors, light sensors, Bluetooth accelerometers, all these type of things. And we actually did a nice post talking about when to leverage each depending on reliability, flexibility, initial cost, ongoing maintenance. The weight sensors, if you're going to put weight sensors in every single position of everything that's merchandised in your shelf, what happens when somebody accidentally spills a Coke in it? Can you imagine what the maintenance is like, taking that thing apart, rewiring it, doing all that kind of stuff? That's just a real problem. So some things are less expensive initially, but they're maintenance. And then the other thing is, which of these technologies is improving fastest, right? So when you think about, light sensors, they're very basic. The improvement velocity here is very low, whereas computer vision, more progress has been made in the last 3 years than it has in the previous 30, right? So, which are the right technologies, which are the right sensors? We're seeing explosion across all of these, right? And because it's at the core, unlocking the value of your data. And that to me is a critical dimension that we talked about. One of the 5 big ways that people are thinking about the role of the store in the future. About, it's still where 80% of transactions occur, and yet the data is blind. I mean, you just have your sales data and your store traffic data. What about all those interactions? How can I improve all those interactions, all those shopper journeys across the different channels, and harmonize the value of that data and reuse it online in store? Stephen Dennis talks about not thinking about omni-channel, or certainly not, separate channels, but how these all work together. If you unlock the data and interaction data and customer data across where 80% of transactions occur, what happens to your business? It's transformative. And so, what we're seeing at Perch as an example, I think digital signage is like the banner ad of traditional retail. It's just it's blinking. Maybe it's Maybelline, maybe it's Maybelline, maybe it's Maybelline. It doesn't help me shop. Digital signage isn't sexy to me at all. And you typically see, from a customer engagement perspective, 4.4% on digital signage. And Albert at Home Depot is like, kiosks. Oh, he threw kiosks down, out the window because of, all the frictions in customer engagement. 0.7% of people use kiosks that walk in the door. 0.7, right? With Perch, it's typically around that 18 to 20% number. That's an order of magnitude difference. If you look at the sales list, kiosks and digital signage typically do about 1 to 4%. We do 30 to 130% sales lift. This stuff is powered by data. It's powered by intelligence. It's powered by dynamicism. That's the stuff that will change. And that's what it means to me, activating the store. Because, one of our investors, Mary Gay McKay, who, was the C-suite of Saks and was at the head of merchandising for Harrods, she said the future of retail is digital, but the future of brand is physical. And that's what it really means to activate the physical store. And that's why you're seeing the democratization of these technologies, right? Like, we started off with Joe Malone because high end and it was experiential, and you touch that fragrance and it animates an honeysuckle lemon. It was great. And everyone's like, oh, you're basically a high end custom agency. We are now, the things that excite me most is deploying to 200 pet stores, to 100 groceries at a time, 1,000 drugstores, et cetera. That's what's happening right now because the cost of the technology has gone down. The mandate for getting this data and the ability to use it are going down. And so, it's a really fascinating time to really think about, activating the store in the future of retail. And, to me, that's what got me excited. And when my friends are like, really? Retail technology in store? It's like, yeah, that's where 80% of technology, of transactions occur. That's where the most technology transformation needs to occur. And we're starting to see it. We're starting to see 2020 was a big acceleration for all those kind of core foundational items. And now we're seeing it on the experience side of the house. And, that's why I'm excited about 2021. That's why I was excited to speak to you all. With that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, hopefully go to the chat. Oh, that's the wrong one. There we go. All right, great. All right, awesome. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that gave you some insight into the things that we're seeing from an industry perspective, things that we're looking at in terms of what our customers are saying. And so with that, I'll open it up, kind of anything on the chat side of the house, and kind of any interesting questions that you guys might have about some of the stuff that we've talked about activating the physical store. All right. Okay. All right. So I'm getting a question from Brian. Ryan from Lincoln asked, could I use my existing online content for my in-store experience? If not, how do I make content optimized for in-store? It's interesting. We absolutely reuse all kind of internet content for these experiences, but they have to be reformatted, right? Like one of the biggest, absolute no-nos, right, is to put up a screen and oh, here's my website. It's like, I could have done this on my couch. Why are you giving me my website? The same website. The expectations of a shopper in store with digital is fundamentally different, right? On a website, I'll browse, I'll click around, I'll go all over the place. So you can hide information, 4 clicks in, you get them on a path. With in-store, the attention is you got to provide the right information right now on the screen. You can't have them type a bunch of letters because the keyboards are weird. So the modalities of how people interact with digital are fundamentally different. Video works really, really well. Ratings and reviews work really, really well. Get that to the front. If you want them to take action, you need big buttons. You need to animate them, catch their eye. One of the things that, if you remember blinky text in 1998 and how terrible it was, right? The blinky text is a bad thing. And crazy web pages that animate all the things, and even some of the parallax, people who really, go overboard on the parallax. It's like, oh, this is too busy, too complicated. In a digital in-store, taking your calls to action, animating, in order by timing where you want the eyes to avert is actually pretty critical, because there's less of a native design language about what I can touch and what I can't touch. Little things digital signage is traditionally in landscape mode. But your phone is in portrait mode, right? And so one of the things that we've seen is that if you have a screen that's in portrait mode, it actually encourages greater interaction, because they see a screen that looks like this and oh, I touched that thing. Whereas a screen that looks like this, I don't touch that thing. So those are some of the design considerations you need to think through. And oh, by the way, your website isn't designed, is designed to be browsed on this, but not necessarily like this. So, those are some of the things that, some of the considerations around content and formatting. Happy to talk to you about kind of some of the design things we have. We got stuff popping into the chat. I love it. Salamau, I hope I pronounced that right. How does Perch differ from a digital kiosk? It's funny. I hate the K word. I hate being called the K word. We actually at Perch, right before COVID hit, we're gonna record, LL Cool J's "Mama Said Knock You Out" to start off with. Don't call us a kiosk, right? The definition of a kiosk is complicated, right? It's a standalone thing, whereas we integrate the technology into the shelf. Generally, we do some standalone kiosks, but it's also standalone in that it's like just over here, it isn't aware of the shopper journey in the process, right? So for Perch, right, like again, I pick up the product, it wakes up and leaves the right message at the right time, and that's like the IoT is really the intelligence and the data underlying it, versus like, hey, there's some digital experience over here. I have to start from scratch. Like for example, there's that shoe example, like style the look, right? Let's say I pick up a shoe, right? I want to get more information about the shoe. Now, it'd be great if an interactive display just starts telling me about the shoe. Now let's talk about what that kiosk experience looks like. I go over to a kiosk and I'm like, all right, I'm interested in shoes. Reload the page. Women's shoes. Reload the page. Let's see, Christian Louboutin, because I got nice taste. Thank you very much. Great, Christian Louboutin. Okay. All right, scan. Okay, next page. Scan. Okay, that one. Great. All right, here's the information. Okay, style. Finally get to style the look. I'm 7 clicks in, and all of the onus is on you. And that's what Albert was talking about, the frictions that you create with the wrong digital solutions like standalone kiosks. And that's why I think that there's a significant difference. And I always put that graph about like kiosks and 0.7% versus the kind of engagement that we get. I think the CMO of Perchs said it really nicely. Nobody wants to go interact with a kiosk. The nice thing about Perch is it comes to interact with you. And I think what you're going to see is whether it's Perch or anything else, right? Like it's about removing the frictions and not getting annoying text messages like beacons and stuff like that. We backed off that because people are like, oh, this is adding noise to my life. This puts the onus back on me. I need intelligence, personalization, smarter experiences that make each part of the shopper journey, whether it's returns or anything else, to kind of create a greater brand loyalty, to provide the right message in the right time, and to actually be like, yeah, that was pretty cool, right? So that's how I think about us different than kiosks. Jorge Fernandez asks, how could technologies predict purchase intentions? There are a bunch of different things. So one is recognition, right? So if you recognize my beautiful mug, I'm Trevor Sumner, you may have my purchase history. You can certainly do demographic detection. So there's a lot of stuff with demographics because it doesn't have the privacy issue of identification and PII. So we haven't seen a lot of like, hey, this isn't just a 44-year-old male, this is Trevor Sumner and here's his purchase history. The demographic stuff is great in specific certain categories, right? Like if you're in a gamer aisle, it turns out that women play a lot different games than men. Didn't know that. And you can actually message slightly different based upon demographics and age and, et cetera, right? So that demographic can be used as a signal. I think when I pick up a product, there's a great purchase intention, right? Like I pick up a Band-Aid, I've got cuts. Sell me Neosporin, sell me the antibiotic cream, sell me all this other stuff, right? So we think that the product signal is actually the most powerful signal. But there are some other technologies out there that are looking at eye tracking and seeing what people look at and starting to do predictions about like where you stay and where you dwell. What I found in our research at Perch is it becomes complicated because if I'm looking at a product over here and then triggering some information, and then I avert my gaze from the product over to the screen, I went through that entire pathway, and then the data is really, really noisy. And just the design of that has to be really, really careful in terms of not like, oh, product A, no product B, no product C, no product A. And you can put some pauses on it, and you can look at like dwell time, if you will, from a gaze perspective. But trying to influence, once you start influencing the gaze, it's kind of like the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Once you try and measure it, you actually change its path. Physics has a nice way of adding a monkey wrench to those things. So I think those are some of the purchase intentions. And then, of course, technologies can look at, collaborative filtering. People that look like Trevor or, have shopped in similar ways as Trevor also buy these things, collaborative filtering, that type of stuff. Those are some of the technologies that are being used to predict purchase behavior. Thank you, Salamau. And you got to tell me if I'm pronouncing it right or if I'm not. But how could this be applied to more impulse-based purchases like sodas and snacks? Interestingly, I am pronouncing it right. Thank you very much. Pepsi is one of our clients, and so interesting enough, they're looking at like the prepared food section and being like, here's on that on the go shop, like, hey, pair a Pepsi with that rotisserie chicken, pair Pepsi with it. So it's really, really interesting in that way. Now, another example is like a big issue on snacks is like, I don't know if you remember snacks in the 80s, 90s, or even 2000s. It's like Cheetos and corn chips and like everything that basically is bad for you at this point, right? Like everyone's like carbs are the enemy, processed foods are the enemy. And so their whole, like my wife is big on the nutrition and health front if you follow her on Instagram, but she now has chicken chips. They like take chicken skins and chicken protein and put it into a crisp. And it's like a cracker, but it's made out of chicken. It's protein, it's fats, it's things that are healthy for you. How do you message that, right? Like part of that, and this is actually brings up a good a question, right? Like think about what this connecting people and products might look like at scale, right? Imagine walking into a Target and a Perch end cap on every single aisle. And it says, here are your best pet food products, right? And what are the concepts? What does people quality pet products mean? I don't know if you've seen a big thing on like grain-free pet food. Like it's been a big thing because, humans are going against carbs, so should dogs and cats, right? Well, it turns out that the data shows it creates heart disease and some other things. It's like really problematic. But, how do you get that nutritional information? And you go to the snacks. What are the healthy snacks? Kind bars, super healthy, right? If you're actually really into that type of thing, nutritionists will tell you there are a lot better bars than kind bars because of the amount of fruits and sugars and stuff that they put in there, right? So how do you message all of this? When you think about the size of a product and the packaging and the 4-point print that you're supposed to read, that's why all the education happens outside the store, because there's no media for the education to occur inside the store. So, if it's healthy snacks, if it's sodas, on the soda side of the house, think about the battles for, what healthy means. It's like, does it have fruit juice? Does it not have fruit juice? Added sugar? Is it, corn syrup? Is it not corn syrup? Is it gluten-free? Is it not gluten-free? I mean, you think about how particularly people are. There's a lot of education out there. And so I see a world where you walk down the Target and you've got best pet foods, best pet toys. I mean, like think about a Kong. I just got a puppy. She's actually walking right over there. And I saw the Kong toy and I'm like, what is this thing? Like what? But you see a video where you put the food in and it bounces all around and the dogs love it. I'm like, oh, I need that thing, right? Like you need the Kong, right? So best dog toys or pet toys, best organic products. What does organic even mean? Like water in a big plastic container turns out not to be so organic because you got to truck it all out and 10 times the amount of water is used to make the plastic container. So what are the best organic products? What does organic even mean, right? Best baby products, best health nutritional supplements, all these things, right? How do you learn about them in the store? You can't, right? But if a Target, if a department store gave that curated experience, it would give people a reason to go inside to discover those products. And so I'm really excited about the future of enabling these technologies, these experiences, media, this data. As you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about these things. And I think, look, there's certain categories where the margins may not support it or the turnover may not support it. But if you want to connect with your customers, if you want to educate customers as a brand and stand out at retail, you need something. You need something to tell your brand story. We talk about every product tells a story. Like, how do you do that product storyteller? If you're a retailer, how do you enable a storytelling platform for all the brands and give them the data to say, that story doesn't work, this story does great. Here's what you can learn about what content you should use and not use, and use that as a platform to help them to connect where 80% of transactions occur. So I think Brian put in the chat saying, thank you for joining us today, which is 2:00 right on the, right on the head. We're actually hosting an open house. If you want to see some of the stuff tomorrow on Zoom, you get the Zoom link. You just go to our website, you'll see the kind of open house. And I believe actually Brian posted it as a link. And yeah, like, come by, say hello. We got the whole team. You can ask questions. We'll show you demos firsthand. You can like go really deep into what we're doing. And challenge us, whether it's, snacks and sodas or anything else. I think this is a really fascinating time where we all have to kind of share our insights and data together to reimagine and reactivate the store, because the old store where you just put products on the shelf was a boring store, and it was an ineffective store in the age of digital. And so we've got to rethink it, and we've got to start not waiting, for a pandemic to accelerate, the rate of progress and innovation. I think one of the interesting things is the pandemic has shown us that we can innovate as an industry, that we can do so quickly if we make the right investments and we have the right culture and the right mandates. And that's why I'm excited about retail technology. And, I'm not afraid to jump in the cool waters and give it a swim. So thank you, everybody. Oh, by the way, you can connect with me at Trevor Sumner on Twitter, or feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. I like to be out there. I'm happy to answer your questions. I will share with these slides with you if you want them, and we'll have them up on the website. And I hope you subscribe to This Week in Retail, which is my weekly kind of email newsletter where I cover everything that's going on from retail technology to overall retail trends. And thank you for the time. Thank you for choosing this session. It means a lot.